Lightsabers are easily the most iconic weapon in cinema. They cut through nearly everything, deflect blaster bolts, and in the hands of a Force user, they become nearly unstoppable. It's destructive yet elegant, and the endless customization options open up opportunities for intriguing designs. Star Wars began with the iconic blue and red sabers in A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. Then we got Luke Skywalker's green blade in Return of the Jedi. The prequels expanded our arsenal perhaps the most in Star Wars canon, with Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber in The Phantom Menace, then Count Dooku's curved hilt, and Mace Windu's purple blade in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Since then, we've seen all sorts of different colored blades throughout both Legends and canon, with colors like yellow, orange, and white emerging. However, one of the most iconic and unique lightsabers came in the early days of Star Wars: The Clone Wars with the Mandalorian Darksaber, which is now in the possession of Din Djarin. But is the Darksaber actually stronger than your typical lightsaber? Let's talk about it. So, before we analyze the Darksaber's strength in comparison to your standard lightsaber, we need to understand how they both work. Standard lightsabers are powered by a kyber crystal that is encased in the hilt of the weapon. These crystals can be found on a variety of planets like Ilum and Jedha, and are extremely rare and valuable. They are able to store and amplify the energy needed to power a lightsaber. The process of crystal selection is believed to be guided by the Force, and is seen as a rite of passage for young Jedi. The Jedi may need to overcome various challenges and obstacles in order to find the right kyber crystal for their lightsaber. Crystals are also believed to have a will of their own, and some Jedi feel that the crystal chooses them rather than the other way around. To activate a lightsaber, the user presses a button on the hilt, which sends a current through the crystal and power cell, causing the energy to be released and the blade to form. Now, let's talk about the blade itself. This will especially be important once we talk about the Darksaber. The energy that makes up a lightsaber blade is kept within a containment field, which helps to keep the energy from dissipating and allows it to maintain its cylindrical shape. The blade is also able to adjust its size and length based on the user's needs, whether they be a 7-foot-tall Wookiee or a smaller in stature creature like Yoda. Now, for the Darksaber. The unique weapon has a special place in Mandalorian history. It is a lightsaber with a black blade and is considered a symbol of leadership within the Mandalorian culture. The Darksaber was created around 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin by Tar Vizsla, the first Mandalorian to be inducted into the Jedi Order. Vizsla was a skilled warrior and blacksmith, and he used his knowledge of both the Force and traditional Mandalorian weapons to create the Darksaber. After Vizsla's death, the Darksaber passed through a number of different hands and was wielded by several different Mandalorian leaders. The first time we see the Darksaber pop up in the modern Star Wars timeline is in the hands of Pre Vizsla, a descendant of Tar Vizsla, as the leader of House Vizsla and the Mandalorian splinter group known as Death Watch. Pre Vizsla would use the blade to duel with Jedi like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano. He led Death Watch as a member of Maul's Shadow Collective when they took over Mandalore from the pacifist New Mandalorians led by Duchess Satine. After the successful coup, Maul and Vizsla disagree on their next move, coming into conflict with one another. Eventually, Maul challenges Vizsla for the Darksaber and the right to rule Mandalore, killing him and claiming the blade. Maul would become the first outsider to sit on the Mandalorian throne, causing Bo-Katan and many other Mandalorians to split off from Death Watch. Maul would use the Darksaber when he and Savage would duel his former master, Darth Sidious, but was ultimately bested. Maul would be freed in the Son of Dathomir comics, reclaiming the blade to face off with General Grievous. During the Imperial era, the Darksaber is found by Sabine Wren in a Night Sister lair on Dathomir. She would claim its right by beating the Imperial and former right-hand man to Maul, Gar Saxon. After receiving some training from Jedi Knight Kanan Jarrus, Sabine would decide to pass the blade on to Bo-Katan, who reluctantly accepted after receiving support from other Mandalorian clans. During the Great Purge of Mandalore, on the Night of 1,000 Tears, the Empire massacred the planet, scattering the few survivors across the galaxy. The Darksaber somehow came into the possession of Moff Gideon, an Imperial remnant leader who sought to use it to assert his own power and influence. While rescuing Grogu from Moff Gideon's light cruiser, Din Djarin duels the Moff with his own Beskar spear, besting him and thus becoming the rightful holder of the Darksaber. Din attempted to return the weapon to Bo-Katan, who could not accept since Din rightfully won the Darksaber in combat. We saw Din Djarin use the Darksaber both in training and in combat during the Book of Boba Fett, practicing with the Armorer and defending it against Paz Vizsla, another descendant of Tar and Pre Vizsla. Din Djarin will continue to use the Darksaber in The Mandalorian Season 3, and it looks like he'll actually adventure to the planet Mandalore. So now that we've explained both your typical lightsaber and the Mandalorian Darksaber, what makes the Darksaber so special? Well, for one thing, it is a unique weapon that is not easily replicated. The Darksaber is speculated, not confirmed, to contain a synthetic crystal, which would make it different from traditional lightsabers, which are powered by natural kyber crystals. Due to their synthetic nature, those crystals were highly unstable and explosive. The Darksaber also has a very unique blade in comparison to the typical lightsaber, shaped like a more traditional sword. Assuming equal power is contained within the blade, this means the Darksaber should be better at cutting on its edge than a standard lightsaber, and superior at deflecting blaster bolts or melee blows on its flat side. The extra cutting power comes in handy against a material that normally shrugs off regular lightsaber cuts, like Beskar, which we'll get to in a moment. Another interesting thing to note is how Din struggles to lift the weapon while training with it. In Rebels, Kanan describes wielding the Darksaber as
energy constantly flows through the crystal. You're not fighting with a simple blade as much as you are directing a current of power. Your thoughts, your actions, they become energy. They flow through the crystal as well and become a part of the blade.
As Sabine begins to connect with the weapon, she notes that it starts to feel lighter. There's an active connection between a lightsaber's crystal and the person who is wielding it, and that bond grows stronger the longer you hold it, enabling that person to use the weapon with greater ease. It's possible that a lightsaber bond forms quicker for Force sensitives, but it doesn't seem to be a requirement based on how often we see non-Force users wield lightsabers, and it seems like the process of forming a bond is entirely passive. The Darksaber's weight could also be attributed to it being designed thousands of years before any other lightsaber that we've ever seen. The blade of the Darksaber is also shorter in comparison to that of a regular lightsaber, meaning it may have been more effective in close quarter combat, whereas a lightsaber would give a user much more reach at a distance. How exactly Tar Vizsla built the Darksaber has been lost to history. No one knows if there even was a record kept at the Jedi Temple. Maybe it's a story that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau will eventually decide to explore through flashbacks in The Mandalorian. But speculation on design aside, there is some fairly strong evidence which points to the Darksaber being stronger than a typical Jedi's weapon. In The Mandalorian Season 2, Din Djarin adventures to Corvus in search of Ahsoka Tano. The former Jedi thinks that Din was a bounty hunter sent to kill her and initially attacks him. Din defends himself by blocking her lightsaber blades with his pure Beskar gauntlets. Remember that. Now, when Din rescues Grogu from Moff Gideon's ship and duels him with the Beskar spear, look what happens when the two lock up. The pure Beskar begins to glow red, meaning that given enough time, the Darksaber could have even cut completely through the Beskar spear. Now we can label this as a number of things, from continuity errors to narrative, or simply that Ahsoka had less contact with the spear and overall didn't intend to kill Din. Therefore, she could have just used less strength and put less pressure behind her blows. But there's definitely something there. The Darksaber brought Beskar far closer to its melting point than a traditional lightsaber did, and two of them at that. An extended engagement with the Darksaber will overwhelm the Beskar faster than a regular lightsaber would. So, could the Darksaber be stronger than a typical lightsaber in terms of raw cutting power? In short, yes. But it's important to remember that it's the person holding the weapon that makes the true difference in any given duel, hence why Mando was able to defeat Moff Gideon. But that does it for our breakdown on why the Darksaber is the strongest lightsaber in all of Star Wars. Who is your favorite person to hold the Mandalorian weapon? Let us know down in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to drop a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you are new to stay up to date with all of our Star Wars content. Until next time, Red Squadron, thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you. Red 5 standing by.